In the vastness of space, humanity had always wondered if we were alone. That question was answered on a cold October morning when thousands of alien vessels appeared at the edge of our solar system, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of an invasion force, what we encountered was a refugee fleet of damaged ships, their hulls scared and systems failing. I remember standing in NASA's mission control, my coffee growing cold in my hands as we received the first distress signals. The aliens, who called themselves the Narians, had fled their home system after their sun began to collapse unexpectedly. Their massive exodus had gone horribly wrong when they encountered a devastating cosmic storm that damaged most of their fleet's navigation and propulsion systems. Now, 300,000 alien lives hung in the balance, their ships slowly drifting toward the outer planets. The world's governments gathered in an emergency session, debating our response. Should we help them? Could we trust them? The debates raged on social media, in homes, and in halls of power across the globe. As Earth's leading xenotechnologist, I was among the first to board the International Space Station when we made contact. The sight of their ships through the observation window was breathtaking. Elegant crystalline structures larger than anything humanity had ever built, now bearing the scars of their desperate journey. The first meeting with their representatives changed everything. They weren't the advanced, all-powerful aliens of our science fiction. They were refugees, families with children, scientists, artists, and everyday people who had lost everything. Their technology, while different from ours, had been pushed beyond its limits in their desperate flight. What happened next would define our species. Across the globe, space agencies, private companies, and governments began mobilizing for the largest rescue operation in human history. Chinese spacecraft carriers retrofitted their cargo bays to carry alien life support systems. European engineers worked around the clock to adapt our docking mechanisms to their ships. American and Indian scientists collaborated to find solutions for their failing power cores. But it wasn't just the big players. Every nation with even the smallest space program stepped up. Brazilian communication arrays helped coordinate the rescue efforts. Japanese robotics experts developed new tools for emergency repairs in space. Even countries without space programs offered resources, medical supplies, and shelter for the eventual planet-side operations. The real challenge wasn't just technical, it was logistics. How do you rescue hundreds of thousands of aliens with completely different biological needs? Where do you put them? How do you feed them? These questions needed answers and fast, as their ships' systems continued to deteriorate. The first successful rescue operation brought tears to my eyes. Watching our modest Earth vessels, tiny in comparison, successfully dock with their massive ships felt like watching history unfold. The grateful chirps and trills of alien children as they were safely transferred aboard our rescue ships touched something universal in all of us. But just as we were celebrating our first successes, alarms blared across the rescue fleet. A massive power surge was detected in one of the largest alien vessels, a ship carrying over 10,000 souls. Its failing reactor core was approaching critical levels, threatening to trigger a chain reaction that could destroy not only the refugee fleet, but also our rescue ships. With time running out and lives on the line, we faced an impossible choice. The safety protocols demanded we retreat to a safe distance, but doing so would condemn thousands to death. As I stood on the bridge of our command ship, watching the reactor readings climb higher, I knew this moment would define not just the rescue mission, but humanity's place among the stars. The reactor's warning sirens pierced through the command ship's bridge as our rescue teams scrambled to respond. Our sensors showed the alien vessel's power core temperature rising at an alarming rate. Through the view screen, I could see the crystalline hull of their ship beginning to pulse with an ominous red glow. 6 minutes until critical failure, our ship's eye announced, its usual calm voice somehow making the situation even more dire. The rescue fleet captains were all shouting over the comm channels, some arguing for immediate retreat, others refusing to abandon the refugees. I understood both sides. None of us had signed up to die in space, but could we live with ourselves if we fled? That's when one of the Narian engineers, a being named transmitted a desperate plan. They believed they could stabilize the reactor, but it would require direct manual intervention. The catch? Their species couldn't survive the intense radiation levels near the core. They needed human volunteers. Our radiation suits could theoretically withstand the exposure for about 10 minutes. The Narians had detailed schematics of their systems, but no human had ever touched their technology before. It would be like trying to defuse a bomb in the dark while wearing oven mitts. I found myself stepping forward before I could even process the full implications. "I'll go," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I've spent the last decade studying their tech. If anyone has a chance, it's me." Two of our best engineers, Chen and Rodriguez, immediately volunteered alongside me. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. As we rushed to suit up, the Narians transmitted everything they knew about their reactor systems directly to our suit computers. Our rescue ship maneuvered as close as it dared to their vessel, extending a docking bridge across the void. Walking through their ship was surreal. Emergency lights cast strange shadows through the crystalline corridors, and the air was thick with an alien mist their species needed to breathe. We passed dozens of Narian families huddled in evacuation areas, their large eyes following us with a mixture of fear and hope. As we descended toward the reactor level, our radiation meters began climbing. The familiar clicking sound grew faster and faster, until it became almost a continuous tone. Through the suit's external sensors, we could feel the heat rising with each step. 4 minutes to critical, the eye reminded us. The reactor chamber door loomed ahead, its alien markings glowing with the same ominous red as the hull. Chen worked on bypassing the safety locks while Rodriguez set up a relay for our suit communications. The radiation would play havoc with our normal frequencies. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a scene straight out of a science fiction nightmare. The reactor core towered 3 stories high, a crystalline spire wrapped in rings of pulsing energy. Arcs of what looked like lightning danced between the rings, growing more violent by the second. "The containment field is failing," Chen's voice crackled through our local relay. "We need to restart the magnetic bottling system, or this whole thing goes nova." We rushed to our assigned positions around the core, each taking a control station. The Narian interfaces were designed for tentacles, not human hands, making every action a challenge. Through our suit sensors, we could feel the temperature still rising. The radiation was so intense that our suit's warning systems had simply given up and gone dark. As I reached for the main control crystal, my hand shaking inside the thick glove, a new alarm began to sound. The eye's voice cut through our focused concentration. "Warning. Containment field collapse imminent. 3 minutes to critical mass." The fate of thousands rested on what we did in the next 3 minutes, and we were running out of options. Time seemed to slow down as we worked frantically around the alien reactor core. Sweat pooled inside my suit despite the cooling systems running at maximum. The crystal interface burned beneath my gloved hands, its surface hot enough to be visible even through the suit's thick padding. "The containment field is collapsing sector by sector," Rodriguez called out, her voice tight with concentration. "We need to synchronize the magnetic fields or the whole system will cascade." Through the transparent sections of the reactor housing, we could see the energy patterns becoming more chaotic, like a storm building to its peak. Ken's voice crackled over our local comm system. "The Narian schematics don't match what we're seeing. They must have modified this reactor during their journey." He was right. The control systems had been jury-rigged in ways we hadn't expected. These refugees had been keeping their ships running through desperate improvisation, using methods that defied their own engineering principles. A violent surge of energy knocked me back from the control panel. The artificial gravity flickered, and for a moment we all floated in the charged air before being slammed back down. 2 minutes to critical, the eye reminded us, its voice eerily calm amidst the chaos. That's when I noticed something in the energy patterns. A rhythm, like a heartbeat, but wrong somehow. The Narians had described their reactor technology as living crystal, but we'd assumed it was just a poetic translation. Looking at the pulsing core now, I realized we'd been thinking about this all wrong. "Stop trying to force the containment fields," I shouted over the growing roar of the reactor. "The crystal's fighting us because it's trying to heal itself. We need to help it, not control it. It was crazy, but it made sense. The Narians' entire technology was based on crystalline structures that could grow and adapt. Rodriguez caught on first. Like setting a broken bone, she said, already adjusting her control inputs. We need to align the fields so the crystal can reconnect naturally. We began working in harmony, no longer fighting against the reactor's natural rhythms, but working with them. The temperature in the chamber continued to rise. Warning indicators flashed across my helmet display. Our suits were reaching their radiation exposure limits. Ken stumbled, and for a heart-stopping moment I thought he'd been overcome by the heat, but he caught himself and kept working. 1 minute to critical, the AI announced. The energy patterns were starting to align, but too slowly. At this rate, we'd run out of time before the crystal could fully stabilize. We needed something to accelerate the process, but pushing too hard would shatter the delicate balance we'd achieved. Through the fuzzy radiation interference, a new voice broke into our comm system, one of the Narian engineers. Your bodies, the translator rendered their rapid clicks and whistles. Your bodies are mostly water, yes? The crystal responds to organic patterns. Move closer. It was insane, but we were out of options. Together, we stepped toward the core, forming a triangle around it. The radiation levels were far beyond what our suits were rated for, but we could feel it. The crystal was responding to our presence, its energy patterns shifting to match our own biological rhythms. 30 seconds to critical, the AI warned. The chamber filled with blinding light as energy coursed between us and the core. Every cell in my body screamed with the radiation exposure. Through tear-blurred eyes, I saw the crystal beginning to pulse in sync with our heartbeats. Just then, our suit sensors failed completely, leaving us blind to what was happening at a technical level. We could only feel the energy flowing through us, around us, between us and the crystal core. Either we were about to achieve the impossible, or we were about to witness the last moments before a catastrophic reactor failure that would destroy everything within 1,000 kilometers. Everything went white. The world dissolved into pure energy and sensation, and for a moment, I thought we had failed, that the reactor had finally breached. But then something extraordinary happened. Through the blinding light, I began to see patterns, not with my eyes, but with something deeper. The crystal wasn't just responding to us, it was communicating. Images flooded my mind, the Narians' desperate flight from their dying sun. But there was more, something they hadn't told us. Their sun hadn't died naturally. I saw vast machines surrounding their star, ancient technology left by some long-vanished civilization. The Narians had been studying these artifacts, trying to understand them, until something went catastrophically wrong. Are you seeing this? Rodriguez's voice seemed to come from both the comm system and directly into my mind. The crystal, it's showing us memories. Ken's acknowledgement came as a strained whisper. The radiation was taking its toll on all of us, but we couldn't move away now. The reactor's pulse had synchronized with our heartbeats, but it was drawing more than just rhythm from us. Each beat pulled at something essential within us, using our own life energy as a template to stabilize itself. We were becoming living components of the containment field. Through our shared connection, I felt the crystal's underlying structure beginning to heal, but there was a price. Every second we maintained the connection, the radiation exposure climbed. Our suits were now little more than symbolic protection, their systems fried by the intense energy field surrounding us. Critical mass averted, the AI announced, its voice distorted and distant. However, new anomaly detected, energy patterns not conforming to known parameters. The crystal was stabilizing, yes, but it was also changing, becoming something neither human nor Narian technology had seen before. That's when the second wave of visions hit us. The ancient machines that destroyed the Narians' sun weren't weapons. They were tools, meant to shepherd dying stars into new forms of existence. The Narians' mistake wasn't in studying them, but in running away when things went wrong. Their sun wasn't dying. It was evolving. We need to tell them. Chen gasped, his life signs weakening but his mind still linked through the crystal matrix. They're home. They can still save it. But as we tried to pull away from the reactor, we discovered a terrible truth. We had become too deeply integrated into the containment field. Breaking the connection now would trigger the very overload we'd been trying to prevent. The crystal had stabilized, but it needed us to maintain that stability. Every attempt to step back sent cascading shockwaves through the reactor's systems. We were trapped, suspended in a deadly dance between salvation and destruction. Our bodies were failing, but the energy field holding us had become a kind of life support, keeping us conscious despite radiation levels that should have killed us minutes ago. Through the ship's systems, we could hear the Narian engineers frantically working to find a solution. They had never imagined their technology could merge with human biology like this. We had become part of their ship, and they had no idea how to separate us safely. As my consciousness began to blur at the edges, a new set of readings caught my attention. The crystal wasn't just using us to maintain stability. It was learning, adapting, evolving. With each pulse, the energy patterns grew more complex, more intentional. We weren't just preventing a disaster. We were witnessing the birth of something entirely new. But first, we had to survive long enough to understand what we had become. As the edges of my vision began to darken, I saw one last vision through the crystal, a possible future that made my heart race with both terror and hope. The question was, would we live long enough to see it? Time had lost all meaning in our crystalline prison when the ship's A's voice cut through our shared consciousness. Unknown energy signature detected, spatial anomaly forming. Through our connection to the reactor, we felt it before we saw it, a ripple in spacetime, like a wave building just beyond normal reality. The chamber filled with a light that somehow made the previous radiation look dim. But this light wasn't harmful. It felt ancient, intentional, alive. Through our merged consciousness, Rodriguez was the first to understand. It's like the machines around their sun, she whispered through cracked lips. We've created a bridge. The crystal reactor hadn't just stabilized. It had evolved into something that echoed the ancient technology the Narians had discovered. Our human biology, combined with their living crystal technology, had catalyzed a transformation that neither species could have achieved alone. That's when we heard it, a sound that existed somewhere between music and mathematics, resonating not through air but through reality itself. The walls of the reactor chamber became transparent, showing us not the cold void of space, but a tunnel of pure energy stretching across the stars. The Narian engineers were shouting excitedly over the comms. Their instruments were detecting a direct quantum connection to their home system, spanning the impossible distance through a corridor of structured spacetime. We had accidentally created something their ancestors had spent generations trying to understand. The containment field, Chen gasped, his voice stronger now despite our ordeal. It's not just holding the reactor together anymore. It's holding open a gateway. He was right. Our desperate merger with the crystal had done more than prevent a disaster. It had awakened something dormant in the very fabric of space. Through our shared vision, we saw the Narian's sun as it was now, not dying, but transforming, surrounded by the ancient machines like midwives attending a cosmic birth. The refugee fleet hadn't just found sanctuary in our solar system. They had been led here, guided by forces they didn't understand, to complete a cycle begun eons ago. The radiation that had been killing us began to fade, replaced by a different kind of energy. The crystal wasn't just releasing us, it was healing us, using the same principles that had allowed it to repair itself. As we stumbled away from the core, our suits fell away in pieces, corroded beyond recognition, but no longer needed. Look! Rodriguez pointed through the transparent walls. The entire refugee fleet was beginning to glow with the same resonant energy as our reactor. The Narians hadn't built their ships. They had grown them from the same living crystal. Now, after crossing half a galaxy, those crystals were finally awakening to their true purpose. A Narian elder's voice came through the ship's systems, translated with a new clarity. Our ancestors spoke of a time when the barriers between stars would fall, when the children of different suns would join hands across the void. We thought they were legends. We never dreamed. But before they could finish, the gateway stabilized, and through it we saw something impossible. A second Earth-like planet orbiting the Narian's transforming sun, formed from the same processes that had threatened to destroy their home. Their sun hadn't been dying. It had been creating a new cradle for life. As we stood there, three humans forever changed by alien crystal and ancient star machines, we watched the refugee fleet begin its journey home, not to abandon Earth, but to bridge our two worlds. Humanity's first step into a much larger universe hadn't come through war or conquest, but through an act of compassion that had unlocked secrets written into the very atoms of space. The crystal hummed one final time, sharing a vision of our joint future, two civilizations growing together, learning to tap into the living energy that connected all things. We had not only saved the Narians, we had helped them find their destiny, and in doing so, we had discovered our own. The days following our encounter with the crystal reactor passed like a dream. Medical teams were baffled by our condition. The lethal radiation exposure had somehow been reversed, leaving behind subtle changes in our biology that defied explanation. We could still sense each other's thoughts faintly, an echo of our merger with the crystal, and sometimes at night we caught glimpses of stars we'd never seen through human eyes. The Narian fleet hung in orbit around Earth, their ships now pulsing with the same resonant energy as the reactor we'd helped stabilize. Through the gateway, teams of both species worked together to understand the ancient machines transforming their sun. The process that had seemed like destruction was actually terraforming on a stellar scale, creating not just a new planet, but a whole new kind of solar system. Rodriguez threw herself into studying the living crystal technology, working with Narian scientists to understand how it had merged with human consciousness. Chen focused on the practical applications, helping design new ships that could navigate the gateway between our worlds. As for me, I found myself becoming a bridge between our species in a different way, helping both sides understand what we discovered about ourselves through our shared crisis. The changes weren't just technological. The sight of those crystalline ships in our sky had transformed humanity's perspective forever. National borders seemed less important when you could look up and see the physical proof that we were part of something much larger. The knowledge that ancient civilizations had seeded the galaxy with machines meant to guide younger species toward each other gave our cosmic isolation new meaning. We were never meant to be alone, the Narian elder told me during one of our many conversations. Your people's willingness to risk everything to save strangers proved you were ready for the next step. They explained how their own legends spoke of tests that would come to every species, moments that would determine whether they were prepared to join a larger community among the stars. The gateway became a symbol of something profound, not just a bridge between solar systems, but between different possible futures. Humanity had faced its test without knowing it was being tested, and in choosing compassion over fear, we had unlocked potential we never knew we had. 3 months after the reactor incident, I stood with Chen and Rodriguez watching the first joint human-Narian expedition depart through the gateway. The ship was a hybrid of both technologies, crewed by members of both species. They were going to study the ancient machines to learn how to guide other young civilizations toward their own moments of transformation. You know what still amazes me? Rodriguez said, her eyes reflecting the crystalline shine of the departing ship. We spent centuries looking for signs of alien life, building bigger telescopes and sending out signals. But in the end, we proved ourselves worthy of contact, not by our technology, but by our humanity. Chen nodded, absently touching the faint crystal patterns that now traced his skin where the reactor's energy had marked us. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come not from seeking them, but from being willing to risk everything to help others. The gateway hummed with energy, its light painting Earth's atmosphere in colors no human language had names for yet. Through our residual connection, I could feel the ancient machines continuing their work around the Narian's sun, preparing for a future where our two species would grow and explore together. As I watched more ships preparing for their journey between the stars, I thought about how close we'd come to running away that day in the reactor chamber. One moment of fear could have changed everything. Instead, we'd chosen hope, chosen to trust in something bigger than ourselves, and in doing so, we'd helped write the next chapter in both our species' stories. The universe, we had learned, was not cold and empty, but alive with purpose and possibility. We just had to be brave enough to reach out and grasp it.